Good evening, everybody. Let's see, making sure I've got everything together here. Yeah, I think I do. All right. Okay, excellent. Very good. Welcome to session 22 of the Morte class. We are cruising our way now through the book of Sir Tristram here in the middle, moving ever closer to the quest for the Holy Grail. But thanks for joining me this evening. Two quick announcements before we get going, before we dig into things. Three quick things that I want to say at the beginning. So first, announcements. Neither of these things is new, but I just wanted to remind you because both of them are getting closer. One, of course, is Tex Moot. Our next regional moot is Tex Moot down in Waco, Texas on the 19th of January. So I hope you'll be able to join us there. It looks like it's going to be a really great crowd down there, a big crowd this year, even bigger than last year, I think. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So I hope that you'll be able to join us down there if you are anywhere around. So I definitely commend that to you. The second thing is our sale, our promotion for Anytime Audit. So we have our holiday Anytime Audit gift certificate deal that we've been running now for a little while, and it will go through the end of the month. So there's still time. If you've thought about doing an Anytime Audit, which means getting asynchronous access to the lecture sessions, plus all of the reading assignments and reading materials, plus you are considered a student for a year after that. So you also get access to our library resources and everything else. It's a pretty awesome deal. It's only till Christmas Eve. Okay, great, Sharon. I couldn't remember which one it was. So that's coming up soon. So that goes through Christmas Eve. So through the 24th, that is next Monday. So we're running down in time there. And of course, it's perfectly permissible to get a gift certificate for yourself. So it also sort of doubles as a sale on our entire, archive of Anytime Audits. So definitely wanted to commend that. Lots of people have been taking advantage of that. It's a really awesome gift. You can give them people a gift certificate, and then they can choose whatever course from our entire archive they want themselves. So you don't even have to try to guess which one they would most like. So anyway, wanted to remind you of those two things, Tex Moot and our Anytime Audit discount here for the next little bit less than a week. The third thing I wanted to mention is just to remind you, and I'll remind you again at the end of class, we will not be meeting next week because I'll be observing Boxing Day. No, I'm just kidding, but that's going to be a busy week, and I'm just not going to be. It's a holiday week, not going to be around, so we won't have class next week, but we will have class the week after that, which will be the 2nd of January. Things will be back in gear as normal that week, so we should be fine for that. All right, ready to go? Are you ready to get into some wild and wacky adventures here this evening? Stephen, it is not just you. I think that Malory is getting better as a writer. It's hard, Stephen, because on the one hand, when you go back and you read some of the early chapters again and come back, yes, things do flow much better. Now, in part, it's also always the experience of us getting better as readers as well. It's that is to say, like, we just get more accustomed to Malory's language and his prose and everything. But really, it's I agree. It is not just us that's getting better. It is Malory as well. And there are still a lot of things that we can see that Malory not real interested in, such as chronology, for instance, right? We like to just have people go off and have children who then grow up and take part in the story, while everyone else has been just kind of frozen in place, right? That we don't, no time passes for them while the child is off growing up. I suspect, by the way, a similar kind of thing is in play with the cross-generational romances and things like Sir Lamorak and Morgause, right? But Karita, just rolling with it is exactly the thing to do. Yeah, don't try to keep... If you start trying to make a table, a chart in your head of like, okay, so if it's taken, Alessandre l'Orphelin, 15 years or whatever to grow up, then so how long has it been since, Tristram was made a knight of the Round Table? Don't worry about it. That's clearly not a question we're supposed to be asking. So yeah, time is an illusion, Karita. That's just the thing to keep in mind. All right, well, we almost got through the material that I had last time. Just a couple things. We ended with the remarkable and quite unexpected decapitation of Queen Morgause by her son, Sir Gaheris. Soon after that, Sir Dinadan is wandering out, and he meets with two of Gaheris's brothers. Catriona, exactly. Catriona is thinking about Morgan Le Fay still trying to seduce young Studley knights who are at least one, and really it seems likely 2 generations younger than she is. Just again, roll with it. Don't worry about it. It's all good. Anyhow, okay, so remember, I want you to keep in mind the murder of Morgause as we work into this, and the kind of the way that Gawain and his siblings are being sort of fleshed out here. When they understood that it was Sir Dinadan, that's, of course, it's Agravain and Mordred who are meeting him here. They were more wroth than they were before, for they hated him out of measure because of Sir Lamorak. For Sir Dinadan had such a custom that he loved all good Connectas that were valiant, and he hated all those that were destroyers of good Connectas. And there was none that hated Sir Dinadan, but though that every were called murderers. Then spake the hurt Cnicht that Bruce Sounds Pite had chased, his name was Dallan, and sighed, If thou be Sir Dinadan, thou slew my father. It might well be so, said Sir Dinadan, but then it was in my defence, and at his request. Be my head, said Dallan, thou shalt die therefore. And therewith he dressed his spear and his shield, and to make a short tale, Sir Dinadan smote him down off his horse, that his neck was nigh broken. And in the same wise he smote Sir Mordred and Sir Agravain. And after, in the quest of the Sangreal, cowardly and felonsly they slew Sir Dinadan, which was a great damage, for he was a great boorder and a passing good Knicht. Mordred and Agravain, who are the worst of Gawain's brothers. Sir Agravain has not played a very large role yet, but his role is coming. Sir Mordred and Sir Agravain are sort of the 2 peas in a pod there, just as Sir Gareth is by far the worst of just as Sir Gareth is, I gotta keep my head straight here, just Sir Gareth is by far the best of Gawain's brothers. So Sir Mordred and Sir Agravain together are the worst. So okay, what is a boarder? A joker, a jester. This is what Dinadan is famous for. Now, we've already noticed this, right? That Sir Dinadan is the cheeky knight, right? He's the one who's always, he's the sarcastic knight. And we've seen, of course, that his heart is always in the right place. He doesn't, you remember him complaining about Sir Tristram, saying that Sir Tristram is insane for wanting to attack the 30 knights, right? And Sir Dinadan is like, no, I think I'll stand and watch you, right? We've seen this way in which Sir Dinadan is consistently sort of gently poking fun of and deflating these good knights, but that when it comes to it, he always actually has their back and himself does very well. We haven't gotten an official ranking for Sir Dinadan, but he's clearly pretty high up there, right? I mean, he defeats many very good knights. He can't compete in the top 5 exactly, right? I mean, he's not Lancelot or Tristram or Lamorak or Palomides, but he's probably top 10. I mean, he is a passing good Knicht. But first, before he's identified as a passing good Knicht, he's a great boarder. He's a joker. He's funny, and that is the element of Sir Dinadan's character that gets more and more emphasized as we move forward. And today's reading is really sort of the centerpiece of Sir Dinadan's comical career. He not only himself is very funny and plays jokes on people, he invites humor and is the occasion for as many moments of active, comedy as anyone else in the entire work. Yeah. Karina suggests a Malory drinking game. Take a drink whenever you see Tamaka Short Tal or some variation of that. Yeah, that would be good. Just don't drink whenever you see him say "now turn we," right? Because that would be troubling. The bigger point, though, that I wanted to make here is, again, I was speaking last time of the sense in which we're getting lines drawn. This is something that I think is something that is perceptible as we move through this text. There are the good guys and the bad guys, and the bad guys are holding together more and more. And Arthur's world here is already, in a sense, on the decline. I say in a sense because it has not yet reached its apex. Arthur, according to the sort of technical frame, Arthur is still on his way up Fortune's wheel. We will reach the high water mark of the Arthurian court at a particular time, and a noteworthy occasion, and it's not yet. But despite that, I think, to me, it seems that there's a sense in which we've already passed it. There's a sense in which the decline of the court is already coming. The murder of Morgause, I think, is one of the signs of it, right? Think of the difference between what happens with Morgause and Lamorak and what happened with King Pellinore, right? In both occasions, we had those moments, right? The moment of Sir Gawain and Sir Gaheris conspiring together, planning, plotting, right? What are we going to do? That guy murdered our father. King Pellinore murdered our father. He didn't, right? But anyway, them believing that King Pellinore killed their father, and here Arthur is privileging him, right? Arthur is putting him at this, really important place in the Round Table. And that was the moment, you'll remember, when young Sir Gawain, who was just recently made a knight, and Sir Gaheris, who's not yet been made a knight, and is still himself a squire, they're like, okay, we don't want to put up with this. But the plan, right? Like, it's very off the stage, right? It's very quiet. They don't make a big deal of it, right? When it comes down around to Sir Lamorak now, a generation later, we're talking about King Pellinore's son and Lamorak's relationship with their mother, their widowed mother, right? They don't, it's much more open, right? It's a much more public thing that they do. The fact that Malory is digressing here to tell us about the future plans of Sir Mordred and Sir Agravain and how they are going to band together in order to feloniously and cowardly slay Sir Dinadan. And again, notice what is being told about Sir Dinadan. What is Sir Dinadan's custom, right? What is the, yes, he's a great joker, but the primary thing emphasized about Sir Dinadan is that he has such a custom that he loved all good knights that were valiant, and he hated all those that were destroyers of good knights. He likes good guys and dislikes bad guys. And everybody who hates it, there's nobody who doesn't like Sir Dinadan, right? Unless they're murderers. He's like the moral litmus test for knights, right? If your intentions are good, if you're one of the good guys, you're gonna like Sir Dinadan, and he's gonna like you. But more and more is Arthur's court itself. Remember how we had with the tale of Sir Lancelot back in the old days now. When he was fighting people like Sir Tarquin, right, and Sir Paris, who, the maiden raper, right, they were on the outskirts, right, literally like in the woods. In many cases, there were these opposition knights out there who didn't conform to the Arthurian court. And it's one of the things that we saw Lancelot doing, was going around and getting up in the business of people like that, right? To sort of stand up for what knighthood should be, and to try to clean up the countryside. Now we're finding this infection in Arthur's court itself. And apart from, again, that one little moment with Gawain, and a reminder of it at the end of the tale of Sir Gareth, when Sir Gareth rejects Gawain and distances himself from Gawain because Sir Gawain is a murderer, right? So apart from those, there's Sir Gawain was like the bad apple. Kay was rude, but he wasn't a murderer. He wasn't doing any of these things. And Deborah, this is exactly C.S. Lewis talks about this in That Hideous Strength, and he's thinking about Malory explicitly when he talks about this. And again, you can see there is now like a faction of knights among Arthur's knights who are murderers, right? I mean, in part, it's just like the rest of Gawain's siblings growing up, but it's more than just that. And again, I think that we can see these lines being drawn more clearly as we move through. And Zach, I don't have a clear answer to your question, but I think your question is a really important one to be asking, which is, what does this do, essentially to our reading of Arthur himself? What's his role or non-role in this, or his level of responsibility? What does it tell us about Arthur that this is happening, and sort of happening under his nose? It's a great question. Like I said, we get very little of him, so I don't. I'm not quite sure how to answer that. We're going to look at the passage which I think is most the only one passage where we get any real evidence, I think, about that question. But it's an important thing. And yes, Jennifer, you're right that Gawain does take it for granted that Arthur will protect him from the consequences of his actions. Remember when the story was following Sir Lamorak there for a while, right? In that moment when he had to avenge, when he saw Sir Gawain act in the wrong, right? When Sir Gawain just came and stole that other guy's damsel and just went off with her. And then the guy came and fought Sir Gawain. And even though Gawain's in the wrong, Sir Lamorak is like, and remember, Gawain was like, I'm nephew unto King Arthur, and again, he really was using that as a bludgeon to justify his actions, or at least to protect himself from reprisals for his actions. And Jennifer, it does seem he's not wrong, right? I mean, we have no reason to think that Arthur has been holding him to task, or that he's not justified in his thoughts there, and that's a little disturbing. I mean, I do think that we can see a certain amount of rot beginning here already in Arthur's court. And it's important, I think, to see that as Malory is depicting this, the rot it doesn't begin with Sir Lancelot, right? Lancelot and Guinevere are going to be at the core of the problems. When things start falling apart at the end, Lancelot and Guinevere are going to be at the heart of that. But they're not here. Now, it doesn't start with them. It's not about that initially. And I think that that's an important piece of context for us to be remembering as we move forward. All right. King Mark, you may remember. This is after King Mark is there at Arthur's court, and Arthur has rebuked him, and he has reconciled Tristram and King Mark to his, that is Arthur's, satisfaction, right? And sent them off and is like, see, I solved this problem. And you remember we looked last time at the passage where Lancelot feels the need to reinforce Arthur's command by his own personal threat, right? If you do anything to Tristram, King Mark, I'm going to come and kill you with my own hands, right? As if, and he has good reason, I think, to think that King Mark is going to take that threat more seriously than the threat of Arthur's displeasure, it would seem. And again, I think about the Zach thinking again about Arthur's position. One thing that we see about Arthur through that section there, and we see it again here too, not right here in this passage, but in this section, Arthur's a kind of, I don't know if oblivious is the right word, naive. I mean, that seems like a funny thing to say about Arthur, but he brags to Lancelot, right? I have set them at accord, right? I made peace between King Mark and Sir Tristram, right? Isn't this great? Aren't you pleased? And Lancelot basically rebukes him, right? I mean, he's like, accord? Like, what are you talking? Are you an idiot? Right? They're not, like, if you buy that, holy cow, you're a sucker. And so he goes after them, and that's when he makes his threat, right? So it's not just, having Lancelot be Arthur's number one knight, and, therefore the threat of Lancelot's personal reprisal, that's kind of implicit already in Arthur's commands, right? If you disobey Arthur's commands, then you have to deal with Arthur and his knights, which includes Sir Lancelot. So the idea that Sir Lancelot would help to undergird the authority of King Arthur with his own, with the force of his own hands, that's normal. That's perfectly okay. Again, it's one of the things that Arthur's authority is based on, really, is the strength of his court and the knights the fact that he has the greatest knights in the world who are there at his court. But the way that Lancelot does it suggests that it's like that implication is not enough. He feels that he has to go and sort of show King Mark, I'm onto you, man, right? And if you do what I think you're going to do, I want you to know I am personally coming after you. Anyway, King Mark after this sends him, that is Arthur, letters. Here's the letters that we get. But so privily and secretly he sent letters unto King Arthur and unto Queen Guinevere and unto Sir Lancelot. So the varlet, that is the dude who's delivering the letters, so the varlet departed and found the king and the queen in Wallace at Carleon. And as the king and the queen was at mass, the varlet came with the letters, and when mass was done, the king and the queen opened the letters privily. And to begin, the king's letters spak wonderly short unto King Arthur, and bade him enter met with himself and with his wife, and of his knightes, for he was able to rule his wife and his knightes. And when King Arthur understood the letter, he mused of many things, and thought of his sister's wordes, Queen Morgan le Fay, that she had said betwixt Queen Guinevere and Sir Lancelot. And in this thought he studied a great while. To enter met with himself means to consider. Think this over carefully, Arthur. And that's what we see Arthur doing, right? He's studying a great while. He's really thinking about it. Then he bethought him again how his own sister was his enemy, and that she hated the queen and Sir Lancelot to the death, and so he put that all out of his thought. Then King Arthur read the letter again, and the letter close said that King Mark took Sir Tristram for his mortal enemy, and wherefore he put King Arthur out of doubt he would be revenged of Sir Tristram. Then was King Arthur wroth with King Mark. Okay, so Arthur's thought process here is interesting, right? King Mark sends him this letter, and he's like, you really need to put some thought into your queen and her knights, right? And he's like, my queen and her knights. Okay. And then he's like, well, my sister does keep talking about Lancelot and Guinevere, right? Maybe there's something there. Maybe I should think about that. But then, of course, he draws the perfectly logical conclusion. Now, hang on a second. The people who are telling me this are highly motivated, right? These are not objective people. These are my enemies. And what's more, like, Morgan Le Fay is particularly, she hates Guinevere and Lancelot to the death, right? She wants to destroy them. So of course she's going to say that. What reason is there to think that this might be true just because Morgan Le Fay and King Mark suggest that it might be true, right? So again, the thing that I would emphasize, it's not that he is totally unaware that there are signs of affection between Lancelot and Guinevere, right? That is not the case. The question is only, do they love each other par amour? It's not, are they attached to each other? Are they devoted to each other? Is he serving her as her knight? That's totally okay as long as they don't sleep together, right? That's really the only question. And remember the message for Arthur and for Lancelot that Morgan Le Fay put on the shield that she gave Sir Tristram after she captured him, right? That knight standing on the heads of the king and the queen, right? And so the servage and bondage that she was emphasizing there, like Sir Lancelot is enslaving the two of them, that he is ruling over both the king and the queen. That was specifically her message. And again, so is Lancelot guilty of that? No. There's really no... So when he dismisses this idea, is King Arthur being naive? No, he's not being naive. Again, and I think Malory makes this point pretty strongly here, had he persisted in suspiciousness, right, that would have been naive. Naive of him not to suspect the motivations of King Mark and Morgan Le Fay, right? Not to consider the source of these rumors that he knows. Now, Deborah, you are very right that it has been quite rare that we have seen Malory describing the internal mental states of somebody in this kind of detail, right? The detail with which we are given Arthur's full logical process here is very unusual so far. We're sometimes told what people are feeling. We sometimes hear what they're thinking, but very rarely have we just been sort of walked through an entire line of thought like this. And it does make for a very interesting and unusual passage in that way. But you'll notice, of course, the other thing that Arthur concludes from this. He concludes he was wrong, right? King Mark and Tristram are not accorded. Mark is going to be revenged on Sir Tristram, right? He's not given over his threats against Tristram. And so King Arthur is wroth with King Mark. So what does he do about it? Nothing. He does nothing. The text doesn't rebuke him for that. We get no positive evidence that anybody thinks that's bad, right? Nobody says the first word of condemnation against Arthur for not stepping in with King Mark. But it's hard for me to resist that line of thinking. We'll come back to this in just a minute, one or two passages from here. Before we get to the Saracen Armada, one last note, and I didn't have a particular passage in mind for this, but just one single reflection on the rather long incident of the attack of the Sassoins into Cornwall, right? The actual war, not tournaments. This is for the first actual warfare that we've seen in quite some time. When King Mark is being attacked by the Sassoons, who are trying to lay Cornwall under tribute again, like it had been to Ireland before Sir Tristram killed Sir Marhaus and set them free. Remember that I was saying that it seems to me fairly clear that one of the primary functions of Tristram and Isolde in this entire book is to establish a kind of a template, to provide not just foreshadowing, it's more than that, like a model, right? They are the ones who go before, so that having seen all of these things that happen to them, and some of the things that they do wrong and some of the things that they do well, and all these other things, we're being prepared, right? They're blazing the trail, and they're there to provide either a foil or a model or a sort of a predecessor for what we're going to see with Lancelot and Guinevere. I think, therefore, that it is important that we are getting near the end of the stories of Sir Tristram. You'll notice we got almost no Tristram stories in today's reading. We're not going to get a whole lot of... We're almost done with Tristram. We're going to see him again, but we're not going to get too much more of him. Malory's pretty much done with Sir Tristram what he wanted to do with Sir Tristram. However, it seems to me important that kind of the end of the Tristram story, again, it's not exactly the end, it doesn't have an ending per se, but this, one of the final major incidents of the Tristram story, as Malory tells it, tells a story of the king at war, the king's realm under threat, and only having... the only thing that can save him is having his greatest knight there. King Mark doesn't want to call on Sir Tristram. King Mark resents the heck out of Sir Tristram's help in every way and on every occasion. And yet, if he didn't have Sir Tristram, he would be lost and his kingdom would be lost, right? So we get a glimpse. Yeah, Arthur is not going to be King Mark. In some ways, that's going to be one of the biggest differences between the Mark, Isolde, and Tristram story compared to the Arthur, Guinevere, and Lancelot story. But despite the differences in the kings, we get this model, right? A king whose realm and whose entire power is under threat, whose realm is under threat, and the only thing that can save him is being able to call in his number one knight. Yeah. That's a thing that is an important precedent to establish, right? Something which maybe might be relevant to Arthur and Lancelot down the road. Okay, but now let's move on to the interjected story, the chronologically challenged story of Sir Alexander l'Orphelin. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the story of Sir Alexander. My subtitle for the story of Sir Alexander would be What Might Have Been, right? We get this in a couple other places. It's interesting because if you think back to... This is another one of those stories which is kind of like the story of Sir Gareth and the story of Sir Lecote Maltail, right? The story of this young knight who comes in and who proves himself and who has, even like Sir Lecote Maltail, he has mementos of his father's death and is setting out to avenge his father's death. Unlike Sir Lecote Maltail, apparently he does not achieve that goal. But anyway, so once again, we have this story of the enterprising new young knight who's breaking in on the scene. Sir Gareth is the one who has by far the greatest success of the three, though Sir Alexander is pretty studly. Unlike Sir Lecote Maltail, which was interesting because it was like, as we talked about, it's like the story of a mediocre knight, a knight who's pretty good but not one of the best knights in the world. So just sort of showing the adventures of a kind of run-of-the-mill knight with an interesting backstory was sort of an interesting move when we got the story of Lecote Maltail. However, Sir Alexander is different. he's not going to amount to anything, right? He's going to kind of vanish. This is pretty much it for Sir Alessander that we're going to get here, right? He's not really setting something up for later. Malory isn't really. But what we do get is this glimpse of, this kind of thing happens a lot. Really kind of happens all the time. You get these... Yes, Lancelot, Tristram, Lamorak, Palomides are the greatest knights in the land. But they're the greatest knights in the land not only because they are very good when they perform, but because they have staying power, right? Because they stay in the game for a really long time. Even Sir Lamorak, who is going to have the shortest career of the four, right? Even he still already has been in the game for quite a while. Sir Alessander, quite likely, could have been ranked in the top 4 based on what we're told in this story, but he never really gets to measure up against anybody else. He never makes the leaderboard, right? And that is one of the things that I think Malory wants to sort of give us a glimpse of, right? I'm put in mind of one of the things that Malory's narrator so often says when he's describing the tournaments, right? When he's trying to demonstrate, he'll give us the events of one of the days of the tournament, right? And we'll get a whole bunch of different descriptions of exchanges, and there'll be, one particular knight who starts thranging in the press and striking down night after night and all that kind of thing. But then, he'll kind of, the narration will move on from him and it will tell us about this, the great things that are happening somewhere else on the field, right? When the narrator is trying to tell us who deserves the prize that day, when the crowd is acclaiming who holds the prize, the thing that he keeps saying is, he began the day best, and he held on for the longest, right? It matters not. What matters is not like who performed the single most impressive feat of arms on that day, right? What matters is whose overall performance, who did the most that day, who stayed strong all day long. Those are the ones who win the prize that day in the tournament, right? And I think that, again, this is what Sir Alessander makes me think of, because he's awesome, but he's short-lived, right? He doesn't end up having any real impact on Arthur's court or on any of the other Arthurian stories, not because he can't, not because he's not good enough, but just by circumstances, and thanks to King Mark, he's not going to live long enough. And so he never really accomplishes anything. And that's in part what it's all about, right? Remember, it's a contact sport, right? People die all the time accidentally, right? So there is this sense of, the reputation, the worship that knights are able to win is not necessarily an absolute expression of like who in theory might have been the greatest. We'll never know really who might have been objectively the greatest, right? But who stuck around longest, who accomplished most, who built up their worship most over time. Lancelot is important because he has been, for, 50 or 60 years apparently, with all the generations that have been going by, we have no idea. But for a long, long time now, Lancelot has been the number one knight, and he's still the number one knight. The last point I'd make about this is I think that this extends this is not just about prowess in arms, right? It is about that, but there's more to it than that, right? Again, it's about who is gonna stay the course. Knights rise and fall, right? We do get those who, there are moments when some of the greater knights could fall away, right? What's going to happen with Sir Palomides? We see he's on the edge lots of times, right? With Sir Lamorak, with Sir Tristram especially. Is he going to get consumed by his envy? Envy is Sir Palomides' problem, right? He envies Sir Tristram, and it's hard to blame him for the level of envy that he has. What's he going to do about that, right? Is he going to Is he going to fall off the wagon, right? Is he going to drive himself right over the moral cliff and into destruction? What's going to happen with Sir Palomides? He could do that. And if he did, he wouldn't be one of the greatest knights anymore. And he would not be, one of the ones in the running to be given the prize for the day in that sense. Anyway, Rachel, you're right that though Malory states frequently that Tristram and Isolde and Lancelot and Guinevere are the greatest lovers, much of what we have seen so far from Tristram and Isolde is actually pretty destructive. Yeah, now, the confounding variable there, Rachel, is of course Marke, right? King Marke. A lot of the destruction is King Mark's fault. If King Marke weren't such a jerk and murderer and all that kind of thing, then there wouldn't be so much destruction, right? He is very culpable for what happens. And so, of course, compared to King Marke, King Arthur looks awesome, right? You can kind of forget King Arthur's apparent passivity and negligence. That's a strong word, but the shoe kind of seems to fit in places here. Again, but he's not King Marke, right? He's worlds away from King Marke. But, Rachel, your point is still very well taken, right? They are the greatest lovers. One of the conclusions, Rachel, that I would draw is that Malory is suggesting this love, love itself is pretty destructive often, right? This is not necessarily a good thing at all points. And Karita, I do agree with you that the whole Alexander the Orphan section is sort of about King Marke being the worst. Yes, King Marke, it's one of the purposes, I think, of this section to show exactly how bad King Marke is. We've already seen him. Remember, we saw him first being a bad knight, being a wicked knight and a bad knight when he was off in the previous section doing his ill-advised solo knight errantry thing. Now we're seeing him being a super bad king, right? And yeah, Karita, just as I've been suggesting that Tristram and Isolde are really in part there to sort of inform us and help us to be prepared for the story of Lancelot and Guinevere, King Marke also is the great foil for King Arthur in this way. Anyway, okay. Having said those things broadly about the story of Alexander l'Orphelin, let me look at a few particular passages which I thought was interesting. The first is the defeat of the Saracen Armada. So it befell on a time that miscreants, Saracens, landed in the country of Cornwall, soon after the Sasoins were departed. And when the good prince Sir Bodwin was ware of them where they were landed, then at the landing he raised the people privily and hastily, and or it were die, he let put wildfire in 3 of his own shippes. And suddenly he pulled up the sail, and with the wind he made those shippes to be driven among the navy of the Saracens. And to make a short tale, those 3 shippes set on fire all the shippes, that none were saved. And at the point of the day, the good Prince Bodwin, with all his fellowship, set on the miscreants with shoutes and cries, and slew the number of 40,000, and left none alive. When King Marke wist this, he was wonderly wroth that his brother should win such worship and honour. And because this prince was better loved than he in all that country, and also this Prince Bodwin loved well Sir Tristram, and therefore he thought to slay him. Yeah, okay, so I mentioned that envy is the big temptation of Sir Palomides, right? Envy is the stumbling block that we see Sir Palomides falling down on many, many times, right? King Marke is like the embodiment of envy. Envy is one of the 7 deadly sins. Envy is a big deal. Envy is what we... the 7 deadly sins were categorized there's one point. There's a famous verse in the epistles in the New Testament that characterizes sort of the three enemies of man, being the world, the flesh, and the devil. The seven deadly sins were subcategorized on this basis. I always have loved this subcategorization, actually. The sins of the flesh, of course, are lust and gluttony and sloth. The sin of the world is covetousness, greed. The sins of the devil are wrath and envy, and especially pride. Envy is one of the sins of the devil. And the essence of envy is essentially it leads to a sort of reversal of like the entire fundamental moral code, right? When you feel bad when good things are happening to other people, and when you feel good when bad things are happening to other people, that is the essence and the heart of envy, right? King Mark's reaction is a classic and really extreme example of envy, right? His brother, and yes, Carita, this is his brother, right? Sir Bodwin. And Carita, you may be right that for the sake of Cornwall, the wrong brother is king here, right? So there was some mismanagement there, as Elizabeth Bennet might say. But anyway, except in this case, one brother has all of the good and all of the appearance of it. But anyway, when King Mark's brother, Prince Bodwin, heroically drives off the enemy, and saves the day, Mark is furious that this happened, right? He is consumed with hatred for his brother, is wonderly wroth that his brother should win such worship and honor. That's all that he cares about, right? He cannot be grateful. He cannot be happy, even that his own kingdom was saved, that his own throne has been secured by his brother's actions. He is the opposite of grateful. He is furious about that. David, a rather large Saracen invasion force just happened to land on the Cornish coast. Yeah, this kind of thing happens all the time. Remember this happened to the 11 kings way back at the beginning of Arthur's reign? Remember they went home and found 30,000 Saracens attacking their castles? It happens, Great question, Mighty Felix. And I agree with Harnuth. It does make it sound like wildfire is a specific thing, right? It's not just an adjective applied to fire, like fire that's really, really blazing, right? Now, it sounds like a particular kind of fire. I don't think it might be, or sort of to be evoking Greek fire. Greek fire was kind of famously unknown to anybody but the Byzantines, right? So that was a carefully and successfully guarded secret by and large. I don't know that that's exactly, but that seems to be the kind of thing that that he has in mind. Certainly, I do definitely think he put wildfire in 3 of his own ships. Notice it's definitely different from set on fire all the ships, right? It doesn't put wildfire in the other ships. Again, it's not just an adjective. I do think that that's definitely a specific thing there. We're going to get wildfire later on. Someone's going to use wildfire to burn down the castle that Morgan Le Fay is holding Sir Alexander in, right? And again, there's that same thing. They're going to put wildfire at many points in the castle, and thus the whole thing is going to burn down. So yes, I do very definitely get the impression that Malory is referring to a particular phenomenon there. Yes. Yes. Yes, Sakai. Tyrion Lannister would be proud. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Okay. The thing that I would emphasize here, again, in this instance, the envy of King Mark and the murderous rage that he is driven into by his envy, this is almost like a textbook example of envy. Like, it's hard to imagine, really, a more extreme example of envy than this. He has a lot of reasons to think positive thoughts, right? To express positive feelings, to be grateful for this, right? It is his own brother, right? So there's like the natural affection that should be part of that as well. There's the relationship between a king and a liege. Like, this is what he's supposed to do, right? This is what he's being a good liege man to his king here and helping to protect the kingdom. The fact that, Mark's own life and crown have personally been saved. I mean, it's almost everything heaped on there. He has, like, nothing would have been easier, in theory, than for him to be grateful, at least a little bit grateful, to Prince Bodwin, and instead he has this diametrically opposed reaction. King Mark is eaten up with envy here. He's somebody who acts like this is scarcely human anymore. And in fact, you may remember that's exactly the kind of language that Boethius used when he talked about people who give in to sins like this, and he compared them to different animals, right? Like they lose their humanity entirely when they get themselves into this position. We are seeing King Mark really, really devolving here. And again, I think that this establishes an important. This is a warning. This should be a warning to us all, as Mary might say, right? Certainly a warning to people like Sir Palomides. I mean, goodness, there, but for the grace of God, and that's going to be important later, goes Palomides, right? But more than that, what about Arthur, right? Notice the lack of envy that Arthur shows towards Lancelot. He could. Remember the conversation we had after the story of Sir Lacote Maltail, when we saw Lancelot out there giving away lands and setting up lords and everything like that? Arthur could resent that. Arthur could resent the fact that it's Lancelot that everyone's afraid of and not him, right? A feeling of rivalry towards even those that are serving you well, that can happen, right? Even if you don't go full King Mark, nevertheless, he really sort of shows how this works. Again, King Mark to Sir Tristram is again clearly that foil there. But again, here with Prince Bodwin, one of the things that we get from it's not about the love, right? Rachel, as you were pointing out before, the love of Tristram and Isolde is pretty destructive, which is true, but it's the envy of Mark that is most destructive at all. And one of the points that we get here, his envy goes well beyond merely sexual rivalry, right? Or sexual jealousy, the desire to, conserve his wife to himself. There's no romantic or sexual angle with Prince Bodwin here. David, it is an interesting question of why isn't this a Sir Tristram story, right? Why is this a Sir Sadok story, right? About he is the one who spares young Alisander's life and does not drown the baby, defies his king and refuses to drown the baby. Why is it not Sir Tristram? Again, I think the story of Alisander, Carita, as you said before, one of the clear messages of this story is, let's show you exactly how bad King Mark is, right? And so we get this whole story, which is completely apart. It has nothing to do with Tristram and Isolde, right? This is just like what King Mark does on his off days, right? This is how he spends his free time, just to show you how that works. And again, just as Tristram and Isolde are here to sort of show us how lovers operate and the kinds of difficulties that lovers create and the kind of destructiveness, Rachel, as you suggested, it can lead to if it goes wrong, right? Or, situations run amok. Just as we get that with Tristram and Isolde, with King Mark, we get that, and here's what happens if a king goes off the rails, right? And again, King Mark completely off the rails here. Michelle, I totally agree with you that we rarely get any sense that Mark cares about Isolde, right? Remember, he only married her in the first place. It seemed like to tick Tristram off. So yeah, no, I don't think he cares much about Isolde either. Just his own honor, which of course is nil. This is after Sir Sadok has been caught, so King Mark has discovered that Alisander still lives, right? And in fact has now grown up and been knighted, which is awkward for him. And therewithal King Mark took a sword in his hand and sought Sir Sadok from chamber to slay him. When Sir Sadok saw King Mark come with his sword in his hand, "Sir," he sighed, "beware, Mark, and come not to knock me. For wit thou well that I saved Alisander his life, of which I never repent me. For thou falsely and cowardly slew his father, Prince Bodwin, traitorly for his good deeds. Wherefore, I pray Almighty Jesu, send Alisander might and power to be revenged upon thee. And now beware, King Mark, of young Alisander, for he is mad a knecht." "Alas," sighed King Mark, "that ever I should hear a traitor say so afore me." And therewith 4 kneechtes of King Mark drew their swords to slay Sir Sadok, but anon King Mark his kneechtes were slain afore him, and Sir Sadok passed forth into his chamber, and took his harness and his horse, and rode on his way. For there was neither Sir Tristram, Sir Dinas, nor Sir Fergus, that walled Sir Sadok any evil will. Sir Sadok can waltz out of the court because the only people who oppose him are those knights of Cornwall that have such a low reputation in Arthur's court, and Sir Sadok takes them out 1-on-4, right? And then he goes back to his bedroom where he apparently keeps his horse. I was a little surprised there, right? Passed it into his chamber and took his harness and his horse and rode on his way. I don't think it actually means that his, saddle and his horse are kept in his bedroom, but it kind of sounds like that, which kind of made me giggle in an immature way when I was reading it. But anyway, Tarlonio, you're right. In King Mark's court, keeping your getaway horse close, it really is not a bad idea. I agree. Yeah, now, Karita, you are right to point out that King Mark is only taking part in a long, proud tradition of kings trying to kill babies. Notice how there again, Karita, as you are indirectly pointing out, he is once more being a foil for King Arthur, right? King Arthur tried to kill Mordred when Mordred was a baby and, succeeded in killing a bunch of other babies. The difference, of course, is that it wasn't just vengeance for his own evil deeds that he was trying to avoid, right? Alisander, notice he's been calling Alisander a traitor since he was an infant, right? He was a traitor baby before, and so to let him go was treason. But and so with Sir Mordred, it was kind of the same thing. But again, this is not Arthur wasn't exactly doing a cover-up, but again, Karita, I do agree with you. The parallels are uncomfortable. And again, I think one of the consequences of this is to remember that, yes, Arthur is very different from King Mark, but, they're parallel, right? It's not a completely different world. He's not irrelevant to King Arthur, certainly. But here's the other thing. Notice what Sadok doesn't do, or anybody doesn't do. King Mark is evil, right? He's off the tracks. I mean, he is completely, and everybody knows it. Everybody can see it. Everybody knows he's going to betray Tristram, right? Everybody knows this, except Arthur, apparently. Well, Arthur finally tumbles to it, too. Even he. Kill Mark, Morgan. Exactly. There's no mutiny, David. Exactly. Sir Sadok is defying King Mark to his face. He is throwing, Mark is astonished at what he's hearing, that someone dares to say this to his face. He is accusing him of being a traitor. You have killed him traitorly for his good deeds. Falsely, cowardly, traitorly. Those are the three adverbs that Sir Sadok applies to the slaying of Sir Alisander's father, Prince Bodwin, King Mark's own brother, right? So King Mark committed fratricide, by the way, right? I mean, again, that's just on the side, right? Compared, he doesn't even mention that element of the crime. But notice what Sir Sadok won't do, is actually attack Mark, right? He doesn't say, you are a traitor, you do not deserve to be king anymore. I'm going to take you down right here and now. And I'm not saying that he has to become a murderer himself. He could just do the keep thee thing, right? And, keep thee, King Mark. I appeal you of treason, and I am going to, I challenge you to prove yourself with your body right now. I'm coming after you and I'm going to take you down. He doesn't do it, right? He doesn't even, that doesn't seem to be on the table, right? King Mark gets away with all these things. Nobody can take him down, because for anybody else to do that would be, Sir Sadok it would be wrong for him to attack his lord. He doesn't do it. He won't do it with swords. Killing his own king would be a traitorly act, right? So he won't do it. So, kind of gets you thinking, doesn't it? What are the options? I mean, when you've got a king as bad as Mark, Tristram can't just kill him and take his throne, or else, he'd be doing the wrong thing too. So, gosh, what recourse is there? What could possibly happen? Who would possibly have the authority to come in and take King Mark off his throne as he so richly deserves? The answer, of course, is King Arthur. And this moment is the one where I was thinking most keenly, like, where the heck is King Arthur, right? Where is King Arthur? What possible excuse is there for his inaction here? Remember, he has already seen, he made King Mark swear an oath that he would cease plotting against Sir Tristram's life, right? Which he now has evidence based on, apparently, on King Mark's own letters to him. He has evidence, and Tristram's letters, he has evidence that King Mark has disobeyed him, right? Has broken his vow. And then, of course, there's this kind of going on. Fratricide, of like the noble hero of the country and everything. King Arthur has the legal right, even the legal obligation, to come in and straighten things out here, right? And it doesn't happen. It never happens. No matter how many people King Mark feloniously slays, right? Or has killed. And I cannot help but think King Mark, therefore, grows into not just a dubious parallel, a cautionary tale for King Arthur, but an actual indictment of King Arthur himself. I just have a hard time not reading that. It's hard because we get no direct evidence of this. Nobody says this. Not one single character in the story has ever opened their mouth and said, "Where is King Arthur? Why doesn't Arthur do something?" Right? How is, will no one rid us, of this terrible king? Nobody says that. So we don't have the direct evidence that would really make me happier, right? That this is really the a correct reading of the text. But I still, despite the absence of any such direct evidence, have a really hard time not thinking it. All right. Look at this. Sir Sadok goes off and King Mark, sends a false knight chasing after him to try to kill him. Right, no good. But within short space Sir Sadok met with that false knight and slew him. Than was King Mark wood wroth out of measure. Then he sent unto Queen Morgan le Fay and to the Queen of Northgalis, praying them in his letters that they twa sorcerers would set all the country environ with laddies that were enchanters, and by such that were dangerous knightes, as Sir Malory and Sir Brunus sans pite, that by no mean Alessander le Orphelin should never escape, but other he should be taken or slain. And all this ordinance mad King Mark to destroy Sir Alessander. So now we have the axis forming, right? We have this positive alliance between King Mark and Morgan le Fay and the Queen of Northgalis, who has been like one of the minor sorceress figures. Remember, she was one of the four queens who captures Lancelot when he was taking a nap under the tree at that point, right? Exactly, David. I was thinking the same thing, right? Clearly, we've got this is now it's like the senior capstone project at the Nigromancy school, right? It's time for some field work, girls. Go out in the countryside and lie in wait for Alessander le Orphelin. Morgan, Bruce sans pite is a great wicked character, right? And he's one of the definitely has the longest career, right? I mean, too often these dangerous knights, right? Those very powerful but deviant knights, like Sir Malory, whom Alessander le Orphelin does in fact destroy. Too often they're one-shot wonders, right? We learn about their wicked and evil careers, but they're just sort of set up to have Sir Lancelot come along and take them down, right? Sir Bruce sans pite, he's around for a long time, right? He is by far the most successful, dangerous knight in all of Arthurian history. Better even than Sir Garland the Invisible Knight, who had a number of hit-and-run successes, right? But Sir Bruce sans pite is even better. Isn't it amazing, David, that he hasn't been killed yet? But what he's really good at is his super fast horses, right? And the swiftness with which he runs away. If ever things are not going his way, he gets on his super fast horses and he is out of there, right? Which, of course, is another shame to him, right? Almost as much shame to him as the, wicked deed that he's doing in the first place. He acts first, felonsly, and then he acts unknightly, right? Cowardly. But of course, if you're Sir Bruce sans pite, you don't care, because it means you get to live another day to perform other wicked acts. It's all good, right? Let's see, does Bruce ever die? I think he is going to get killed. I'm forgetting. It's been so long since especially this section of the text. It's been a long time since I've gone through. It's one of the reasons I'm really enjoying this, because I haven't worked my way carefully through this central section of the book in a long time. Back when I used to teach Arthurian Lit, I regretfully always had to skip this section because I was trying to do a whole bunch of Arthurian works in the semester, of which Malory was only one. Yeah. Yeah. Jennifer says, once you stop caring about shame, you become really dangerous, right? Yeah, and that certainly is Sir Bruce. Yeah, good. Okay, so again, the main thing that I would point out, the main thing that I would emphasize here is notice we have seen wicked people individually acting wickedly, right? We've seen the occasional rogue knight who sets up his castle where he captures knights and puts them to wicked shame and all that kind of thing, right? This is a known phenomenon in the Arthurian world, and we've seen many examples of this kind of thing. But it's getting different now. This is the first sense of this kind of network that we've gotten, right? A network that King Mark could draw upon, and a network that Morgan Le Fay and the Queen of Northgalis are in charge of in some way. Karita, I'm not sure how much he's paying the queens or what their motivation is to work along with them, but how do they know each other? Yeah, is there a club, right? Do they have a secret handshake? I don't know. But again, as I've been saying about the lines being drawn more and more clearly, right? We get this sense it's not just that there are still perils in the world, like out in the perilous forest, you might find these perilous knights or giants or questing beasts or something. Not saying the questing beast is necessarily evil, but it's perilous, right? These things are not just perilous. There are evil people out there who are determinedly evil, like Mark, like Sir Bruce, like Morgan Le Fay, and they're working together, right? They're in cahoots. And look at the action that they're taking specifically, right? They are setting all the country environ with laddies that were enchanters, right? Place enchanters all over the place, right? There's like laying traps for him. Let's ratchet up the peril in the part of the country that we know Alessander Le Orphelin is. These are not just random adventures, right? The deck is being stacked against him by the contrivance and cooperation of the evil alliance here. Yeah. Karita, I have a lot of questions too. There are so many, oh man, like, isn't it just tempting to start spending a lot of time writing Malory fan fiction? There are so many untold stories that, like, you want to tell, right? Man, so many, like, other versions of this story or other points of view on these stories or things that are going on that we never really hear about, that I want to hear about, I mean, seriously. That would be really good. Anyway, Morgan Le Fay still up to her old tricks. Remember, Alessander was grievously wounded in the battle with Sir what's his name, this one, Malagrin. And he was almost killed, but not quite killed. And Morgan Le Fay takes him in, and she's like got one of the magic ointments, that heals you almost completely. But she makes him promise. She makes him promise not to leave. Right? He has to stay in the castle with her for a year and a day, and she wants to be his lover. Right? But there's this damsel, fortunately. There's this damsel who never gets a name, but who is my favorite character in the whole Sir Alessander story. This damsel who is some way associated with Morgan Le Fay, but who is not towing the party line, right? Sir Knight, sighed the damsel, and ye wold be merry, I could tell you good tidings. Well o'er me, sighed Sir Alessander, and I micht hear of good tidings, for now I stand as a prisoner, be me promise. Sir, she sighed, wit you well that ye be a prisoner, and worse than ye ween, for my laddie, my cousin, Queen Morgan, keepeth you here for none other intent, but for to do her pleasure, one hit liketh her. Yet another attempted reverse rape, right? Once again, we have a knight who is being held captive and to the would-be sexual whimsy of one of these predatory women. Once again, this theme raises its head, right? "Ah, Jesu defend me," sighed Sir Alisander, "from such pleasure, for I had lever cut away my hangers than I would do her any such pleasure." I have no comment. "As Jesu me help," said the damosel, "and ye would love me, and be ruled by me, I shall make your deliverance with your worship. Tell me now by what mean, and ye shall have my love." "Fair knight," sighed she, "this castle ought of reek to be mine, and I have an uncle, the which is a mighty earl, and he is Earl of the Pass, and of all folkes he hateth most Morgan le Fay. And I shall send unto him, and pray him for my sake to destroy this castle for the evil customs that been used therein. And thon will he come and set fire on every part with wildfire." There's our wildfire again. "And so great I get you, and so shall I get you at a privy postern, and there ye shall have your horse and your harness." Okay. So she has a devious plan, right? "You can stay here, but I'm going to set you free," right? "We'll set you free by burning the castle down around you." And of course he stays. So he goes out into the garden, right? And the castle burns down, and then he just stays there, right? "But I shall stay on this spot where the castle used to be for a year and a day." So no longer is he Queen Morgan's prisoner, and there's a much lower chance that he is going to be seduced / raped by the predatory Queen Morgan, I guess, in the open fields near the wreckage of the castle than there was in the castle. So having had the castle burned down, he's now free of her, I guess. Yeah. Carita, I agree. So many of these knights would be useless without damsels. How many of these stories have the damsels been the real hero of? Remember Leonette, right, in Sir Gareth's story? Again, you know, So, Carita, you know, one of the things that I have been coming to confront, this reading of Malory has helped me figure out something that has bothered me for a while. I've never been able to articulate exactly... I have always been tremendously disappointed by the Mists of Avalon. There are a lot of things that I just don't like about it, that I wouldn't like under any circumstances. But it's not just that I don't like it. I've always been disappointed. Disappointed almost to the point of feeling offended by the Mists of Avalon. But I couldn't really ever quite put my finger on, like, what nettled me so much about the Mists of Avalon. And I figured it out. What bothers me about the Mists of Avalon is that it is almost the book that I really want to read, right? That Sir Thomas Malory gives you the very clear sense, and we've talked about this a little bit before, that there is this huge women's like alternate culture there, right? This entire story could be told from the point of view of the damsels, right? We see them interacting. We see them connecting. We know so many stories in which this random damsel shows up and is pivotal, and the clueless knights have no idea who she is, why she's doing this, what her larger story is. This is going to be true through the very end of the story. We're going to continue to get this glimpse of there is this whole female world which lies behind. There is this entire other story which Malory seems to be aware of but doesn't tell, right? And that's the story I want to read. I think I've wanted to read that story for a really long time. And when I first sort of found out about the Mists of Avalon, that's what I was hoping for. I was hoping to get that story. And it's like kind of that story, or sort of almost that story. But it's, to me, so disappointing because it's not the story. It's not what I wanted. It doesn't really... It totally retells it too much. Like I don't want that story. I want this story. But I want this story told from the point of view of the women. I want to know what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah. 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 Interesting. Morgan says, Morgan, I was hoping you'd be able to help me with this. Morgan says that Vera Chapman's novels are closer to that. Okay. All right, hang on a second. I don't know those. I said, give me a moment here. I gotta let me pause class to look up this book recommendation, because this is important. This is important. Oh man. Okay. All right. I will look. I'm making a note here. The King's Damsel. Is that one of them, Morgan? Okay. The King's Damsel. Oh man, it's really short. That's terrible. Okay. It's about Lynette. Interesting. Yeah. Oh, cool. Awesome. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Okay. All right. Totally on my list, Morgan. Thank you for that. Okay. Anyway, this damsel is great. Now, one of the things that I want to point out here, Sir Alisander's reaction is fairly extreme, right? Remember when Lancelot was similarly propositioned by Morgan Le Fay herself? In fact, remember, he was given the choice of the 4 sorceress queens. Anyhow, his reaction, I would rather castrate myself than do her any such pleasure. That's not how Lancelot talked. There's an edge here which is shifting a bit. Remember when I was saying I don't really understand why sex is important in this story? I don't really understand the significance of sex in Malory. I still don't. This passage, on the one hand, is theoretically data which could help me to understand that. In the end, I feel like it is reminder. I feel like it is a reminder that I just don't understand what the problem is here. I don't get it. I'm not sure that I understand at all. And that's just difficult. He would rather castrate himself than do her any such pleasure. The pleasure of Jesus, defend me from such pleasure. I said that Lancelot didn't respond quite this way. It's not just that it's more extreme. We've heard people say, Jesus, defend me, before. Does Alisander mean it? That is he asking Jesus' help? Is there a legitimately religious turn to Alisander's declaration here? His pledge that he would rather castrate himself than be the victim of pleasure such as that. That's Saint Jerome, you know? I mean, that's straight up Saint Jerome, who, according to tradition, did in fact castrate himself. Those of you who know the New Testament, you remember that bit where Jesus says, if your eye offend you, pluck it out. It is better to enter into life blind than to to go to destruction. If your right hand offends you, cut it off, right? There were many medieval moralists who then kind of took the next step and were like, so, thinking along those lines, if you are having a problem with sexual temptation, do the math, right? I'm not saying that was mainstream. I'm not saying that was popular. Self-castration was never popular, but that was a known line of thinking, which more extreme moralists did sort of push. And so Alessander quite striking declaration that he would prefer to castrate himself than to, again, notice how his reference to his own castration is flanked by references not to sex, but to pleasure specifically, right? He would choose castration over pleasure in that context, right? With Queen Morgan under pressure in this thing. Yes, Sarah St. Jerome had big problems with women. You're right. There are a few problems with women that St. Jerome didn't have. He had issues. But anyway, why do I bring this up? This is going to be important later. We are going to get an increasing focus on the importance of virginity and of sexual virtue, which we had kind of prefigured gently in Lancelot's heterodox, or at least unorthodox sexual creed, or at least unconventional, I should say, perhaps, sexual creed. There's something different here. Sir Alessander is not the first knight to be almost reverse raped by a sorceress, right? That's practically an institution at this point. His reaction is different. Things are changing, right? Things are drifting. And I forget, Deborah, was it you who was quoting that hideous strength earlier on? And yeah, I mean, I'm totally thinking of that too. If you like, Deborah, you can think about a lot of this part of the text as we're reading this to be a sort of a explanation and commentary on that line from that hideous strength, as I think that C.S. Lewis is absolutely right in his reading of Malory there. I think it's, as you know, C.S. Lewis is such a good reader. I disagree with him sometimes, but pretty rarely actually in his reading of medieval works. But anyway, so yeah. Ye shall have my love. Another brief thing I want to touch on there. Ye shall have my love. What does he mean by that? What kind of pleasance are they doing to each other? Sorry, David wasn't here before when you mentioned that. Could you give the reference for that? By the way, we also, speaking of that hideous strength, that line here, the sorceress is setting all the country environ with ladies that were enchanters, is a line that's quoted by Professor Dimble, as I recall, in that hideous strength. Like, he actually quotes that line in the book. But yeah, Deborah, could you remind us, like, which bit of it's near the end, right? When they're talking about, I think it's near the end. Yes, Ransom, in speaking to Merlin, talks about good getting better and worse getting worse. Yeah, getting sharper. Yes, exactly. Yep. Okay, anyway. All right, let's move on. Same damsel. So, Sir Alessander finds his lady love, right? Alessander, whose lady love is named Alice, right? Alice, the beautiful pilgrim, and because she's a daughter of the pilgrim knight. And Alessander is doing this thing where, okay.
So when they were departed, Sir Alisander beheld his laddie Alice on horseback as she stood in her pavilion. And then was he so enamoured upon her that he wist not whether he were on horseback or on foot. Right so come the false knight Sir Mordred, and saw Sir Alisander was so affoned upon his laddie, and therewithal he took his horse by the bridle, and lad him here and there, and had cast to have lad him out of that place to have shamed him. Let me confess, I don't really understand what's happening here. So, Alisander is contemplating his lady, and he is so overwhelmed with her beauty that he is unaware of his surroundings. Mordred comes in at this point, sees him in this peculiar psychological state, and decides that he, Mordred, is going to take advantage of the opportunity to shame Sir Alisander, right? So he leads him away by the horse here and there, and he's trying to lead him away so that I don't know what he's going to do to him. He's going to shame him somehow, right? Like, I don't know what he's going to tie him to a tree or something. Yeah. Karita, you're right. I mean, this is how you can tell when someone is really in love, right? I mean, if somebody says that he loves you but he still is aware of whether or not he's on foot or on horseback, you have to question, you know, how sincere really are his feelings. Yeah. Oh, interesting, Michelle. I hadn't thought of that, but maybe he's still in the place where he promised he would stay, right? He's still standing in the burned wreckage of the castle that he promised Morgan Le Fay he would remain in. So if he's being led away, then he would be shamed because he would have left it, right? Yeah, that's a good. That seems likely, actually. So when the damosel that help him out of that castle saw how shamefully he was lad, anon she let arm her and set a shield upon her shoulder. Unprecedented. We have never had a woman in arms yet in all of Malory until this moment. And therewith she mounted upon his horse, and got a naked sword in her hand, and she thrust unto Alisander with all her might, and she gaf him such a buffet that him thought that fire flew out of his eyen. And when Sir Alisander felt that stroke, he looked about him, and drew his sword, and when she saw that, she fled. And so did Sir Mordred into the forest, and the damosel fled into the pavilion. And so when Sir Alisander understood himself how the false knight would have shamed him, had not the damosel been, then was he wroth with himself that Sir Mordred had escaped his hondas. But then Sir Alisander and his laddie Alice had good gam at the damosel, how sadly she smote him upon the helm. Yeah, this you're right, Karita. This girl doesn't mess around. So these are important life lessons, right? If you find yourself in this position where you're so overwhelmed with love for someone that you don't know whether you're on foot or on horseback, the cure is a nice concussion, right? So all you have to do if you see somebody else in this position, give them a sharp buffet so that they feel like fire is flowing out of their eyes, and then they'll be fine. So it's good to know these little tricks. That she arms herself, though, and goes on horseback, this is still remarkable. And it's sad that she doesn't end up being with Alisander, right? He's marrying this other girl. But anyway, whatever. Look at Mordred here, right? Notice what Mordred has become. Remember Mordred in the story of Sir Lacote Maltile? Sir Lacote Maltile met with Mordred at that point, right? And remember Mordred went along with him and kind of showed him the ropes. Remember it was Mordred who was explaining, like, you know, the reason a bunch of guys are coming by and knocking you off your horse and refusing to fight on foot is that they're wily veterans and you're a rookie. You know, they know they're better jousters than you because jousting kind of takes practice. But since you're younger than they are, and they're not getting any, they're not getting any younger, and you're young and good breathed, you might be able to take them on foot, and they're too wily for that, so they won't fight. Remember, that was Mordred who explained that to him, and who was Sir Lacote Maltau's companion for a while, until, you remember, Lancelot shows up, and then Mordred excuses himself and leaves. He will not ride in companionship with Lancelot. So already we see, sort of the separation of the good and the bad, the good and the evil. But Mordred was not just like wandering around causing trouble, right? I mean, he was an ally to Sir Lacote Maltau. Everything was fine. He didn't want to hang out with Lancelot, and Lancelot didn't want to hang out with him, but it was okay, right? Then we got later on, right? What we just looked at earlier today, when Mordred and Agravain met Sir Dinadan, right, and both got unhorsed by him and were upset by it and are going to conspire to come and murder him later on. Here we have Mordred showing up as he's the false knight Sir Mordred. He's just false now. And he shows up only in order to cause trouble, in order to do bad things to people, in order to bring his goal is to bring shame to Sir Alessander. He's not even trying to murder him, right? He's just wanting to bring shame. It's what he does. And as soon as his opportunity to bring shame, as soon as he gets rumbled, he's out, right? Yeah, he's been reduced to popping out of bushes and making people look dumb. Yeah, Carita, I agree. Yeah, he no longer seems to have any function than to just be a bad guy here. Jennifer, I agree. If only this damsel had given Mordred a good whack instead, many things might have been different, right? Sakaya, I agree. Yeah, Alessander and Alice is very confusing. Carita agrees. She thinks that their names are too similar. This celebrity marriage is never going to work out. But here's the end of the story. Once again, like the story of Sir Lacote Maltau, Malory seems to, I don't know, does he bore of it? Does he just tire of it and get bored? I don't really know. But where we get this ragged ending of the story, right? And at the 12 months end, he departed with his laddie, la belle Pilaron. And the damosel, that is the castle burning, helmet buffeting damsel, wold never from him. And so they went unto their country of Benoy and lived there in great joy. All three of them, apparently. But, as the book telleth, King Mark wold never stint till he had slain him by treason. And by Alice, he gate not King Mark, I assume, pronouns. Remember, we're often pronoun challenged, or antecedent challenged, perhaps I should say. It is not King Mark getting a child by Alice. I'm assuming it's, in fact, Alessander. And by Alice he gate a child that hight Belengerus Lebeus. And by good fortune he come to the court, he that is Belengerus, I believe, come to the court of King Arthur and praved a good knecht. And he revenged his father's death, for this false King Mark slew both Sir Tristram and Sir Alessander falsely and felonsly. So finally somebody is going to do in King Mark. And who's it going to be? The grandson of good Prince Bodwin, who was killed, stabbed to death by King Mark at the beginning of this story. Like Sir Lacote Maltau, avenging his father turns out to be not the highest thing on the priority list of Alessander l'Orphelin, despite the fears of King Mark. But King Mark is going to be finally taken care of by the grandson. And it happened so that Sir Alessander had never grace ne fortune to come to King Arthur's court, for and he had come to Sir Lancelot, all Knightes side that knew him, that he was one of the strongest Knightes that was in King Arthur's days, and great dole was mad for him. Again, like wasted opportunity, right? That got, unfortunately, Sir Alessander's a flash in the pan, right? And he's never going to meet Sir Lancelot, who would have loved him. And also the implication, I think, there, he never got to measure himself against Sir Lancelot, right? Maybe he could have beaten Sir Lancelot. He's got a great record. He's way better than Sir Lacote Maltau, right? He's much more like Sir Gareth. But anyway, certainly he could have been a contender, Sir Alexander, but he's not a contender. And there's great dole made, and his son's going to eventually avenge him. The end. All right. Started late, so I'll carry on for a little bit here going into the tournament of Sir Lew's. Only a few, just a few sort of scattered things I wanted to point out about the tournament at Sir Lew's. Mostly about Sir Dinadan being awesome. When Sir Galahalt understood their quarrel, he bade them go to the dinner. So this is Sir Palomides and Sir Arcade, who are fighting over a damsel. Sir Palomides is defending the damsel. As soon as ye have dined, look that either canique be ready in the field. By the way, just my context here, this is just an interesting passage, I think, to kind of show us what a day in the life of a tournament was like. We get the description of the tournament, right? But then we break for dinner, right? And then we're going to have a duel to the death after dinner, right? Leading to one of my favorite transitions in all of Malory. So when they had dined, they were armed both and took their horses, and the queen and the prince and Sir Lancelot were set to behold them. And so they let rend their horses, and there Sir Palomides and Sir Arcade met, and he bar Sir Arcade on his spear end over the horse tile. And thon Sir Palomides aleaked and drew his sword, but Sir Arcade meeked not arise. And there Sir Palomides rased off his helm and smote off his head. Thon the Haut Prince and Queen Guinevere went to supper. I just love that. Notice there are 2 or 3 consecutive decapitations followed immediately by a celebratory supper in this tournament alone. That transition, it's funny the first time. It gets even funnier to me every time we get it, right? Somebody gets their head swapped off, and then we go eat dinner. It never gets old. Thon King Bagdemagus sent away his son Meliagaunce, because Sir Launcelot should not meet with him, for he hated Sir Launcelot, and that knew he not. Now, hang on, we'll come back to Sir Meliagaunce in a second. Sir Palomides is a good knight in every way. He's a powerful knight. We see him fighting for the good. He is a champion that people are seeking out here, even though Lancelot is present, right? Damsels are coming to seek Sir Palomides out because it is known that he is a great defender of damsels. We can see Palomides, his worship, right? His reputation. I talked about how close Palomides is to like the moral cliff, right? Palomides has not allowed himself to become completely consumed by envy. And the result is, we're seeing results. This is a good tournament for Palomides. Less so from his performance. He doesn't ever win the prize in this particular tournament, but it's the extras, right? It's the pre-dinner decapitations that he features in that are, or pre-supper, excuse me, between dinner and supper, where he really distinguishes himself and proves himself to be fighting for the right causes and being a good guy who is getting better and better, just as people like Mordred are getting worse and worse. Now, Sir Meliagaunce. King Bagdemagus is the father of Meliagaunce, and of course we've known King Bagdemagus ever since he was passed over for Sir Tor for Knight of the Round Table long ago, though he's since been made a Knight of the Round Table, of course. Meliagaunce, in case you have forgotten Meliagaunce, you shouldn't forget Meliagaunce because he's very important, but a very important minor character. But he is the one you may recall who ended up fighting with Sir Lamorak because Sir Lamorak overheard him praising the beauty of Guinevere and declaring his hot love for Queen Guinevere. And then Sir Lamorak ended up fighting him because he was maintaining that Morgause was more beautiful than Guinevere, and then Lancelot breaks it up and fights with him instead. You remember that scene? That was Meliagaunce, right? So the Meleagant's Lancelot parallel there, both of them loving Guinevere, Meleagant's loving Guinevere, it would seem inappropriately, whereas Lancelot is showing him his own perspective to be uncomfortably close to Sir Meleagant's. We got that before, right? The thing that is revealed here is that King Bagdemagus is trying to keep Meleagant and Lancelot apart. He does not want them to meet. Why? Because he knows pronouns here. For he hated Sir Lancelot, not King Bagdemagus, Meleagant. Meleagant hates Lancelot. And that canoe he not. Lancelot, I believe, if I'm sorting out his pronouns properly, it is Meleagant who hates Lancelot, and it is Lancelot who is ignorant of this fact. King Bagdemagus knows all of this. He knows that his son hates Lancelot. He knows that Lancelot doesn't realize this. He wants to keep the two of them apart because he doesn't want his son doing anything rash. Okay, so again, just a little minor appearance of the minor but important character, Sir Meleagant, which I wanted to point out. And again, notice the point here is Lancelot's, in part, one of the points here is Lancelot's obliviousness, right? He doesn't see that there's a problem here. And in part, I think, remember, he wasn't offended when he learned that Meleagant was fighting against Lamorak to defend the beauty of Guinevere, right? He wanted to champion it himself, but he wasn't like, how dare you, to Meleagant, right? He didn't seem to view Meleagant as a sexual rival for Guinevere. Meleagant does view Lancelot as a rival in that way, it would seem. Again, there's hatred, but the hatred is in one direction, suggesting there is, in fact, still a very significant difference between Lancelot's perspective and Meleagant's perspective, right? Okay. Lamorak mixes it up with the Gawain family, right? But Lamorak comes to their defense here. The kin of King Arthur are getting their butts kicked, and Lamorak shows up and defends them for Arthur's sake. This is a huge deal, right? So when he was departed, the king came to Sir Lamorak and thanked him of his goodness, and prayed him to tell him his name. Sir, sighed Sir Lamorak, wit you well I owe you my service, but as at this time I will not abide here, for I see of mine enemies many about you. Alas, said King Arthur, knew wot I well it is Sir Lamorak de Galis. Ah, Sir Lamorak, abide with me, and be my crown, I shall never fail thee, and not so hardy in Sir Gawaine's head, neither none of his brethren, to do thee wrong. Okay, so what do we learn here? Again, pausing here for a second. Sir Lamorak says to him, he asks, tell me what your name is, right? I'm not going to tell you. I owe you service, but I'm not going to stay because there are many of my enemies about you. I did this for your sake, but the people who surround you, whom I was just defending, are my enemies. I would not be safe with you, King. That, again, sounds like an indictment, right? Your kin are going to try to murder me, King Arthur. I cannot stay in your court because if I do, your kin are going to kill me. With the implication, and you are not going to be able or willing to stop it, right? Arthur's like, oh, I know who this must be. You must be Sir Lamorak, right? Both because you won't tell me your name, and that's what Sir Lamorak always does, but also because you're enemy to Gawain and stuff. Okay, you must be Lamorak. I get it. He knows all about it, right? He says, by my crown, I'm not going to fail you. Stay with me, and I will keep Sir Gawain and all of his brothers from killing you. Sir, great wrong have they done me and you both. That is truth, said King Arthur, for they slew their own mother, my sister. It had been much fairer and better had ye wedded her, for ye are a king's son as well as they. Ah, Jesu mercy, said Sir Lamorak, her death shall I never forget, and if it were not at the reverence of your highness, I should be revenged upon Sir Gawain and his brethren. Truly, sighed King Arthur, I will mock you at accord. Sir, sighed Sir Lamorak, as at this time I may not abide with you, for I must to the joustes, where is Sir Lancelot and the haut prince Sir Galahalt. He's going to go join them at Sir Lew's. Remember, Arthur can't go, so Lamorak is here where Arthur is at this time. It's pretty confusing in there, but this is hard. Arthur knows about the murder of Morgause, and he seems to have done nothing about it. Remember Lamorak's comment as he's standing there in his shirt, spattered with the blood of his lady, and he says to Sir Gaheris, Knight of the Table Round, right? You're a knight of the Round Table, and you do this, right? You have done sham and evil. He has brought shame upon himself forever by his evil action, says Lamorak. Really? Not in Arthur's court, it would seem. Again, at least not to look at. What shame has he received? Where's the shame? Arthur knows all about it and seems to have done nothing. He's like, boy, it would have been better if they... I'm on your side, Lamorak, right? They should have just let you marry her, right? What would have been the harm? Lamorak points out his own... discretion, right? Forbearance, better word, forbearance, right? I have not taken vengeance on them. I have not challenged them to fight me to the death because of you, Arthur, right? Because of the reverence for your highness. I'm not going to kill your kin. But if it weren't for that, I totally would, because they absolutely deserve it. And he excuses himself. He clearly does not trust Arthur to protect him. He does not think he would be safe in Arthur's court. And there's every reason to believe that he's right. Whether or not King Mark's actions are an indictment against Arthur, Lamorak's position clearly is. Arthur looks incredibly weak here. And Sir Gawain and his brothers, of which, by the way, I don't think Gareth is included. Remember Gareth distancing himself from Gawain and not hanging out with him, right? This is getting more and more out of hand, right? He seems powerless or negligent. It's really hard to emerge from this without a negative view of Arthur. It really is. Jennifer points out that poor Sir Balin was blamed for simply failing to stop a damsel from killing herself. Another knight was blamed for killing a damsel accidentally, but now it seems almost anything goes, right? Again, worse is getting worse. I think we can, this is where, again, I think we can see there is a kind of decline here. It's hard for me not to say that things are already starting to decline. Back to the tournament. So when the haut prince saw Sir Dinadan do so well, he sent unto Sir Lancelot and bade him strike him adown. And when that ye have done so, bring him afore me and Queen Guinevere. Thon Sir Lancelot did as he was required. Thon came Sir Lamorak and smote down many Connectas and rased off helmes and drove all the Connectas afore him, and Sir Lancelot smote down Sir Dinadan and made his men to unarm him. And so brought him to the queen, and though the haut prince laugh at Sir Dinadan, that they make not stand. Well, sighed Sir Dinadan, yet have I no sham, for the old shrew Sir Lancelot smote me down. So they went to dinner, all the court, and had great disport at Sir Dinadan. Sir Dinadan is always, he is the kind of boarder, right, the kind of joker, the kind of jester, who not only makes fun of other people, but is himself the butt of the joke most of the time too, right? The old shrew Sir Lancelot. Remember, he told stories about how close friends he was with Lancelot and how he's traveled with Lancelot before too, right? So here he he can't. He's like, I can't, what was I supposed to do? Sir Lancelot came after me, right? But of course, really, this is all just the setup for what we're going to get afterwards. I'm going to... Well, okay. No promises. This is an important... Here's Sir Palomides' second active pre-dinner decapitation. So Juan the dinner, or pre-supper again, between dinner and supper is when Sir Palomides does his decapitating. So Juan the dinner was done, they blew to the field, to behold Sir Palomides and Sir Corsabrin. Sir Palomides piqued his pencil in the midst of the field. A pencil, by the way, right? Not a pencil, a little flag, right? Piqued his pencil in the midst of the field, and thon they hurled together with her spears as it were thunder, and they smote either other to the earth. And thon they pulled out their sweardes, and dressed their shields, and lashed together michtily as michty knicktes, that well nigh was there no piece of harness that would hold them. For this Corsabrin was a passing felons knicked. Than Corsabrin sighed, Sir Palomides, wilt thou release me yonder damosel and the pencil? Than was he wroth, he Palomides presumably, no, he Corsabrin, sorry, was wroth out of measure, and gaf Sir Palomides such a buffet that he kneeled upon his knee. Than Sir Palomides arose lichtly, and smote him upon the helm, that he fell upraked to the earth. Upraked means lying on your back, by the way. It doesn't mean sitting upright. We use the word upright to mean vertical, right? To be upraked means to be on your back with your face to the sky. He fell upraked to the earth, and therewithal he rased off his helm, and said, Yield thee, Corsabrin, or thou shalt die. Fie on thee, said Sir Corsabrin, and do thy worst. Then he smote off his head, and therewithal come a stink of his body, when the soul departed, that there make nobody abide the savour. So was the corpus had away and buried in a wood, because he was a pinem. Okay, so this is the duel of Saracens, right? Sir Palomides and Sir Corsabrin, both of them are Saracens. Neither one of them are baptized, right? So both of them are non-Christians. Two Paynim knights between the two of them, right? And Sir Palomides wins. This is super important. Now, Tarlonio, felons, I think that's like felonsly, like he's one of those dangerous knights. He's one of those felonious knights. And he, so he's like lying in wait. There's this sense with Malagrin, when he was fighting Sir Alexander, we got the same emphasis that like, I don't know if it's that these dangerous knights, these felonious knights fight dirty. Is the kind of the general sense that like they're more dangerous fighting on foot than other knights because they're not gonna give quarter and they're willing to fight dirty, I think is the emphasis there. But anyway, what happens when Sir Corsabrin dies? This is going to be important later, much later. But I promise you there will be payoff for this. Pay special attention to this. When Sir Corsabrin dies, all of a sudden there is a horrid stink from his corpse. There is this immediate, spontaneous corruption of the body of Sir Corsabrin, right? So that nobody might abide the savor. Nobody can stand the smell of the corpse of Sir Corsabrin, right? It is associated plainly with, and immediately after this, you notice what is emphasized directly afterwards, right? They take the corpus, and where do they bury the corpus? In the woods. Why do they bury him in the woods? I want to make sure everyone is on board with the significance of what's happening there. All the audience would know the significance of this, right? You don't generally bury people in the woods, right? Exactly, Jennifer. He is not getting buried in hallowed ground. No graveyard, no churchyard for him, right? He is buried in unhallowed ground because he was a paynim, right? Who gets buried in unhallowed ground? Well, let me be exceptionally blunt about this. People who get buried in unhallowed ground are the people who are going to hell. Okay? We have to keep in mind, this is not a matter of opinion. This is not a matter of doubtful opinion in the Middle Ages. Some of these things we know for sure, right? We know that suicides go to hell. We talked about this before. We also know that that paynims who are unbaptized go to hell by definition, right? So remember, this has been an issue with Sir Palomides before. Remember, La Belle Isotte is afraid for his life and intervenes to prevent Tristram killing him on a couple of early occasions because she doesn't want him to go to hell if he dies, because he's as yet unbaptized. So he is going about in jeopardy not only of his life but of his soul, Sir Palomides is, right? Sir Corsabrin dies, a paynim in his sins. His soul is going to the bad place, and he's buried in the woods for this reason. The stink is connected with this, right? The stink of his body when the soul departed, right? The departure of the soul, when the soul emerges from the body of Sir Corsabrin, that, downward bound soul, right? The accursed soul of Sir Corsabrin, it smells horrible, right? There is a stink that everybody can smell. Now, this is not normal. This is not like what happens all the time. This is going to be called in the next passage, on the next page, a miracle, right? Normally, you don't get this kind of an external indicator of people's eternal destinies. Again, not that they would need it in his case, but it's very definite confirmation. Sir Corsabrin is not only a paynim, he was also a wicked guy. He's a felonious knight. The whole quarrel with Sir Palomides is he's trying to claim this damsel against her will. Right? He's trying to make off with this damsel, steal her lands and presumably her person as well. And she is not down with this, and she goes to Sir Palomides for shelter, right, for protection. This is literally the next line. Thon they blew unto lodging, and Sir Palomides was unarmed. Then he went unto Queen Guinevere to the Haut Prince and to Sir Lancelot. Sir, sighed the Haut Prince, here have ye seen this day a great miracle by Corsabrin. What savour was there when the soul departed from the body? You see, the smell, you're smelling the soul, right? It was a miracle that they were vouchsafed this kind of external sign to show them the corruption of his soul. Therefore, we all require you to tuck the bapteme upon you, and than all knightes will set the more be you. Right? Palomides, the moral of this story is you need to get yourself baptized. Right? Nobody wants this to happen to you, Sir Palomides. Sir Corsabrin was a felonious knight. You're a good knight. You're a good guy. Right? We would not want to see your soul in jeopardy when you were killed. Right? Which is going to happen sooner or later. Occupational hazard. So we insist. Get baptized, Palomides. Sir, sighed Sir Palomides, I wool that ye all canoe that into this land I come to be christened, and in my heart I am christened, and christened will I be. But I have made such a vow that I may not be christened till I have done 7 true battailes for Jesus' sake, and than will I be christened. And I trust that God will tak mine intent, for I mean truly. Then Sir Palomides prayed Queen Guinevere and Haut Prince to sup with him, and so he did both Sir Lancelot and Sir Lamorak and many other good connectes. So they all go to supper, of course, because somebody's just gotten decapitated. Sir Palomides won't be christened. Not because he doesn't want to convert to Christianity, but because he says, truth is, I'm already a Christian in my heart. I came to England. He came to this land with the intention of being christened. In his heart, he's already christened. And he plans to be christened. He's not going to not go there. Why has he not been baptized yet? Because he made a vow that he won't be christened until he has done 7 true battles for Jesus' sake, right? Then he's going to be christened. And he trusts that God will tak mine intent, for I mean truly. Sir Palomides thinks that there's a chance he won't go to hell if he's killed even before he's baptized, because he trusts that God will take his intent. He has committed himself to Christendom, right? To being christened, to fighting for Jesus' sake. Even though he's not gone through the ritual yet, he's only waiting because he's sworn that he's going to do true battles first, right? We have never seen anything like this for Sir Palomides before, right? Sir Palomides is like living this secret life, right? This secret life of virtue. He's the Saracen knight who's been this outsider, right? But it turns out that he is an outsider not because he is less Christian than the other knights, but almost in a sense because he's more Christian than the other knights. He takes Christianity way more seriously than pretty much any other knight that we've met, right? That's kind of amazing. That's kind of a big deal. Again, Palomides is shifting. It's been a long time since he has had a moment, right, where he's like wanted to kill Sir Tristram and been eaten up by his envy, right? Sir Palomides at this point seems to be on a pretty good path. And here he is with Sir Lancelot and Sir Lamorak and many other good connectors. And of course, Sir Gawain and his brothers are not invited into that tent. Michelle, yeah. So is there indication that the stench was because Corsabrin was evil besides being a pagan? Yeah, that word felonce by itself, it tells us about his moral character. The whole purpose of their battle, he was fighting in a wrong quarrel. He was trying to like abduct that damsel against her will. And that's the cause that, in the middle, he's like, Palomides, give me the damsel that I want, who's like begging Palomides to defend her, right? Yeah, Michelle, Corsabrin is definitely, he's not just technically, he's not damned on a technicality, right? He's definitely one of the bad guys in this scenario. But again, that stench that they were smelling was his soul. Remember that. Remember that sometimes, by a miracle, you might be able to smell the state of somebody's soul when they die. That's one of the take-home lessons, one of the big take-home lessons here. As I said, there will be a payoff for this. It's going to take us a long time, but there will eventually be a payoff. Don't forget the stench of Sir Corsabrin. David, I have no idea what counts as a true battle for Jesus. I don't know what circumstances under which he's going to be battling for Jesus' sake. It seems likely that he would find more battles for Jesus' sake if he went somewhere else, like say Jerusalem. I don't know. Is this a thing that comes up in the countryside in Logres on a regular basis? I don't know. I have no idea. David, what counts there and what he's thinking about. But anyway, I'm so close. All right, I'm just going to plow through because we're away next week anyway. And at the midst of his dinner, in come Sir Dinadan, and began to rail. This is Galahad. And began to rail. He's making jokes, right? And thon he beheld the haut prince, that him seemed wroth with some faut that he saw. For he had a condition that he loved no fish, and because he was served with fish and hated it, and therefore he was not merry. And when Sir Dinadan had espied the haut prince, he espied where was a fish with a great head, and anon he got betwixt 2 dishes, and served the haut prince with that fish. And then he sighed thus, Sir Galahad, well may I liken you to a wolf, for he will never eat fish but flesh. And anon the haut prince laughed at his wordes. Well, well, sighed Sir Dinadan to Sir Lancelot, what devil do ye in this country? For here may no mean connectes win no worship for thee. I ensure thee, Sir Dinadan, sighed Sir Lancelot, I shall no more meet with thee, nother with thy great spear, for I may not sit in my saddle when thy spear hitteth me. And I be happy, I shall beware of thy boiteous body that thou bearest. Well, sighed Sir Lancelot, mak good watch ever. God forbid that ever we meet, but it be at a dish of meat. Then laughed the queen and the haut prince, that they meek not sit at their table, and thus they mad great joy till on the morn. First of all, don't you love how much laughing everybody does in this part? The number of times that Queen Guinevere is literally ROFL, right, in this whole sequence, right? That Queen Guinevere is laughing so much that she cannot sit in her chair, right? Happens all the time. Now, I think I don't want to go into huge detail on these passages. I just want to point out a few things. First of all, so many times, and I've said this before, so many times it's hard to tell when you're reading a work of medieval literature. There'll be something that seems funny, right? But you're not sure if it's funny or not, or if it's like, is this supposed to be funny or is this not supposed to be funny, right? Is this just funny to me as a modern reader reading this? Did they mean this seriously and only I think it's funny because my values are so different? Or do they think this is funny? Often that happens. Here this is like labeled jokes. These are jokes which are being broadcast as jokes with a laugh track and everything, right? So we get here clear, bona fide comedy by Malory. And it's strange, funny, and interesting. The line about the wolf, right? The bringing that he chooses a fish with a particularly large head and gives it to him, and then makes the joke about the wolf. I don't feel like I'm getting the wolf joke entirely. I have the vague feeling that that Sir Dinadan's line is funnier than I think it is. It's just me. I'm not sure. I'm not seeing the humor, and I feel like it's my fault. It's clearly not Sir Dinadan's fault. The banter between Sir Dinadan and Sir Lancelot. We have seen Sir Dinadan bantering. One of the things that has made Sir Dinadan's banter funny is that he's the only one bantering, right? Sir Tristram is being totally earnest, and Sir Dinadan is bantering, right? Sir Dinadan is giving Sir Tristram a hard time while Sir Tristram carries on being zealous in his knighthood, right? Here we see Lancelot bantering back. Notice that Sir Lancelot gets the bigger speech, right? He makes more jokes. Sir Dinadan makes a pretty simple joke, right? What are you doing here, Lancelot? Now nobody else is going to get to win worship because you're here, right? So him kind of teasing Sir Lancelot, fairly simple, right? Look at the elements of Sir Lancelot's back talk, right? His return banter. He teases him like, I am so with thy great spear, right? Oh, when you come at me with your great spear, I can't sit in my saddle when your spear hits me, right? Oh man, there's no way I can stand up to you, Sir Dinadan, right? I need to beware of thy boiteous body, right? You're boisterous, you're rough and rugged person, right? Notice the alliteration. Boiteous body that thou bearest. I don't think that's an accident. Yeah, Sharon, I was thinking that too. the alliteration is funny. And why is the alliteration funny? Is the alliteration funny because there's still the sense of like old style heroic verse about it? Is that why it's funny? That Sir Lancelot, by alliterating like this, is sort of painting Sir Dinadan like he's the great hero of the epic, right? With thy boiteous body that thou bearest, I shall beware of thee, right? God forbode that ever we meet, but it be at a dish of meat. He makes a pun. The pun is funny, right? So puns are funny to Lancelot. Lancelot makes puns. May we only ever meet at a dish of meat, which I do suspect, Michelle, is also a returning to the fish joke as well. The meat versus fish, right? But notice the other thing that Lancelot does there. Mock god watch ever. Be on the lookout, he says. So, just as Sir Dinadan does not always say what he means, right? Will sardonically say that, oh, I am plagued by these knights like Lancelot and Tristram, whereas the narrator is continuing to go out of his way to remind us again and again that Sir Dinadan loves all good knights. And he's particularly devoted to Sir Tristram and Sir Lancelot, but though he gives them a really hard time, right? Lancelot is giving Sir Dinadan a hard time in exactly the same way, but in the midst of it, he says, mock good watch ever. Be on the lookout, right? Already we can see this this kind of warning, right? That maybe something else is going to happen. Earlier that day, Lancelot knocked Sir Dinadan off his horse because it was funny, right? And brought him back as a prisoner, unarmed, so that everybody could laugh at him, right? The next day. So Sir Dinadan departed and took his horse and met with many connectors and did passing well. And as he was departed, Sir Launcelot disguised himself and put upon his armour a maiden's garment, freshly attired. Then Sir Launcelot made Sir Galihodin to lead him through the rounge, and all men had wonder what damsel was that. Yeah, I bet they were. First of all, she's got to be proportioned slightly oddly if he's put the damsel's clothing outside his armor, right? Because he put upon his armor the maiden's garment, right? So this has got to be the bulkiest damsel they've ever seen, riding around. I no wonder they're marveling. And so as Sir Dinadan come into the round, Sir Launcelot, that was in the damsel's array, got Sir Galihodin's spear and ran unto Sir Dinadan. So first we had the shield maiden who put the armor on to smite Sir Alisander on the head. Now we have Sir Lancelot cross-dressing in order to take out Sir Dinadan, right? Oh man. And always Sir Dinadan, looked up there as Sir Lancelot was. Sir Dinadan knows Sir Lancelot is going to do something, right? He knows. He took the watch reference in Sir Lancelot's joke, right? And he's on the watch, right? He knows. He smells it coming, right? And then he saw on sit on the steed of Sir Lancelot armed. So somebody's sitting in Sir Lancelot's place in armor. So he can't tell it. So it looks like Sir Lancelot's there. So he's in the clear, right? But when Sir Dinadan saw a manner of a damsel, he dread perilous, lest it should be Sir Lancelot disguised. He smells it out as soon as he sees him coming, right? Oh, great. Here comes Sir Lancelot, dressed as a girl. But Sir Launcelot come on him so fast that he smote Sir Dinadan over his horse croup. And anon great coistrons got Sir Dinadan. Coistrons, by the way, are ladle washers. These are like kitchen hands and stuff. They're the local staff that Sir Lancelot has gotten to help him here. And anon great coistrons got Sir Dinadan, and into the forest there beside, and there they despoiled him unto his shirt, and put upon him a woman's garment, and so brought him into the field. And so they blew into lodging, and every knight went and unarmed them. And thon was Sir Dinadan brought in among them all, and when Queen Guinevere saw Sir Dinadan, he brought in so among them all, thon she loch that she fell down, and so did all that there was. Well, said Sir Dinadan, Sir Lancelot, thou art so false that I can never be ware of thee. Oh man, I don't even have anything to say. This is the kind of passage that almost nobody remembers happens in Sir Thomas Malory. Mostly because people don't read the book of Sir Tristram, so they miss this stuff. We can remember, of course, the joke that they played on King Mark, right, where they dressed up Sir Dagonet as and Sir Dinadan, of course, was behind this, pretending that he was Sir Lancelot and having him going chasing after King Mark, pretending to be Sir Lancelot, who was going to, kill him with his own hands or something. No, of course, as we saw, that was sort of made... that was foreshadowing as well, right? And of course it didn't end well because then Sir Palomides, beat all 7 of them. But here we have more pure fun, right? More just the emphasis is the laughter. And Sir Dinadan, he doesn't mind. He loves all good knights, right? The lack of malice in this, right? The fact that this tournament is marked not by hatred, not by envy, not by hard feelings, not by... Remember at the last tournament, the tournament of the Castle of Ladies, we had Sir Tristram doing great, but accidentally killing this dude's 3 sons, which led to him being imprisoned, right? We don't get any of that. The only people that get killed are the people who deserve it, and the emphasis is not on the envy and the wrath and the the vying for position and the I will never be on that side because Sir Palomides is on that side or whatever. It's on fun, right? It's on the whole community spirit. Whose side wins? Who cares, right? Who does best this day? We don't even know. Right? I mean, everyone's like, oh, Sir Lancelot wins the prize this day for dressing up like a girl and taking out Sir Dinadan because that was hilarious, right? That's how you win the prize at this particular tournament. It's really cool, I think, to see this sort of glimpse into what it's like in the good guys camp, right? We might have Mordred out there lurking in the bushes looking to find ways to bring shame onto good knights that he comes across. But then we have Sir Dinadan and Sir Lancelot and Sir Galahalt and Sir Galahodins and Sir Palomides and Sir Lamorak and all of them gathered around and just enjoying each other and laughing until they fall on the floor, right? Now, Zach and Jennifer, you are correct. Arthur is absent. Gawain is conspicuously absent. Arthur is also absent. Is there a cause and effect there? I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's an indictment of Arthur that he misses the fun or that, had he been there would have been less fun. I don't know. It's possible that that's the case, but I'm not really... I'm not confident of that. One of the consequences, I think, of all this is to show us when the Round Table collapses, when the Arthurian court dissolves, it's not just going to be a political disaster. This fellowship, right? These are people who actually enjoy each other's company, right? There's fun in Arthur's court. It's fun to be one of the good guys in Arthur's court. there's, it's just this sort of other angle on the tragedy. Anyway. All right, I've kept everybody super late tonight. Totally irresponsible of me. I wanted to finish this up, though. I couldn't go without the Sir Dinadan scenes here, especially since we're going to miss next week. So no class next week. We'll return for Joyous Guard, and I think we get another... No, it's not the other tournament after that. What do we get after Joyous? I'm forgetting already what I assigned after Joyous. Oh, the Red City. Yeah. And then we get the tournament at Lana Zep, which is the third of these big. We've got the Castle of Maidens, Surluz, and then the tournament at Lana Zep, which is going to be the week after that. So, Joyous Guard next time. As we begin again, we're mostly done with Tristram, but we've got some more stuff to do. So, thanks everybody for joining me. Kudos to everybody. Curried, I see that. Kudos to everybody who managed to stay awake. I will see you guys in a fortnight. Good night now. The Mythgard Academy has been offering in-depth discussions of awesome books and films since 2013, completely free to attend and free to download. If you've enjoyed our discussions and would like to help them continue, please consider donating at signumuniversity.org/fund.